The rain drummed against the tall windows of the Riverside Library, a lonely rhythm I'd grown used to. I was shelving books in the history section, again, when I noticed it. A narrow gap behind the shelf that shouldn't exist. Curious, I shone my flashlight inside. Something glinted in the dark. A leather-bound book, wedged where no book should fit. No title, no name, just age and dust. At my desk, beneath the green lamp that had lit 1,000 quiet nights, I opened it. On the first page, a single line. If you're reading this, then I have failed, but perhaps you can succeed where I could not. What followed wasn't a story. It was a confession, the lost journal of Eleanor Hartley, and the letter that changed everything.
I don't know who you are or when you will find this journal. Perhaps decades from now. Perhaps never. But if you're reading these words, then you deserve to know why these letters exist, why they were never sent, and why the truth matters, even when it's too late to make a difference. My name is Eleanor Hartley. I am 24 years old, and I work as a secretary at Pemberton & Associates law firm here in Riverside. I live in a modest apartment on Maple Street, and by all accounts, I am utterly ordinary. Except for one thing. I am in love with a man I cannot have, and I'm about to do something unforgivable. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. I met Thomas Whitmore on a spring afternoon in 1960. He had come to the law firm to handle his late father's estate. I remember the exact moment he walked through our glass doors, tall, with kind eyes and hands that moved nervously through his dark hair. He wore grief like a heavy coat, and something in me wanted to ease that burden. We began with pleasantries, with paperwork and appointments, but somewhere between April and June, pleasantries became conversations. Conversations became confessions. And confessions became something neither of us had names for. Thomas was engaged to be married. Her name was Catherine Mitchell, daughter of Judge Richard Mitchell, a woman of proper breeding and perfect manners, exactly the kind of wife a man of Thomas's standing should have. Their engagement had been arranged since childhood, a merger of families more than hearts. But Thomas and I, we were something else entirely. We were late-night phone calls and stolen moments in courthouse hallways. We were every conversation we shouldn't have had and every glance that lasted too long. We were the what-if that should have remained unspoken. I knew it was wrong. God, how I knew it. But the heart doesn't care about right and wrong. It only knows what it wants. And mine wanted Thomas Whitmore with an intensity that terrified me.
Dear future reader, the wedding is in 3 weeks, 21 days until Thomas marries Catherine, 21 days until I lose him forever. I've written him 17 letters, 17 confessions of everything I feel, everything I wish I could say to his face, but can't. They sit in my desk drawer, sealed in envelopes that will never see a stamp. I write them late at night when the silence becomes unbearable, when pretending I don't love him feels like dying slowly. Letter after letter, I pour my heart onto paper. I tell him about the Tuesday afternoon when he brought me coffee without being asked, and how that small gesture made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced. I tell him about the night we worked late on the Morrison case, how we talked about our dreams until the sun came up, how I'd never felt so understood by another human being. I tell him that I love him, that I've loved him since that spring afternoon when he first walked through our doors, that I will love him long after he's become Catherine's husband, long after I'm supposed to have moved on. But I also tell him that I won't stand in his way, because that's what love sometimes means, letting go even when every fiber of your being wants to hold on. These letters will never be sent. They can't be. What would be the point? To ruin his life? To destroy his engagement for the sake of my own selfish heart? No, Some loves are meant to be kept sacred and secret, hidden away like treasures that can never see the light of day. So I write these letters to nowhere, to no one. I write them because I need to tell the truth somewhere, even if it's only to the pages of this journal.
Something terrible has happened. Something that changes everything. Catherine came to the law firm today. She'd never visited before. Thomas always met her at restaurants or at her father's estate. But today she arrived unannounced, wearing a blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her smile polite and distant. She asked to speak with me. Me, specifically. My stomach dropped, but I maintained my professional composure and led her to one of the small conference rooms. "Miss Hartley," she said, sitting across from me with an elegance I could never hope to achieve. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." I felt the blood drain from my face, but I nodded. "Does my fiancé have feelings for you?" The question hung in the air between us like a guillotine blade. I could have lied. I should have lied. But something in her eyes, a vulnerability, a genuine need to know the truth, made me hesitate. "I don't know," I finally said. And it was the truth. Thomas had never told me how he felt. We danced around it in our conversations, come close to the edge of confession 100 times, but never actually said the words aloud. Catherine studied me for a long moment. Then she did something that broke my heart more completely than any rejection from Thomas could have. She smiled sadly, and tears gathered in her eyes. "I know he doesn't love me. Not the way a man should love the woman he's about to marry. But I love him, Miss Hartley. I have loved him since I was 7 years old, and he pushed Billy Henderson off the playground swing for pulling my hair. I know this marriage is an arrangement, but my feelings are real." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. "Please," she whispered, "please don't take him from me. I know I'm asking you to sacrifice your happiness for mine, and I know that's terribly unfair, but I'm begging you. Give me a chance to make him happy. Let me try to earn his love over time." What could I say? This woman, this perfect, elegant woman who should have been my rival, was crying in front of me, asking me to do the right thing while acknowledging how cruel that right thing was. "I would never interfere," I told her, and I meant it. I would never do that to you. She squeezed my hand gratefully, stood and left, and I sat in that conference room for an hour afterward, crying silently, knowing that I'd just promised to keep my distance from the only man I'd ever truly loved. Thomas came to see me today. He was supposed to be at his bachelor party, but instead he showed up at my apartment at 11 o'clock at night, rain-soaked and desperate. "Did Catherine talk to you?" he asked, standing in my doorway like a ghost. I nodded, unable to speak. "Eleanor, I can't do this. I can't marry her. Not when—" He stopped, ran his hands through his wet hair. "Not when I feel this way about you." There it was, the confession I dreamed of hearing, arriving at the worst possible moment. "You have to," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Thomas, you have to marry her." "Why? Because it's expected? Because our families arranged it? Those aren't reasons to commit your whole life to someone." "Because she loves you." The words burst out of me with more force than I intended. "She came to see me, Thomas. She knows how you feel, and she's terrified of losing you. And she loves you, really loves you. Not because she's supposed to, but because she genuinely does." "But I love you." 4 words. 4 simple words that I'd longed to hear, and they felt like a death sentence. "Don't," I pleaded. "Please don't say that." "Why not? It's the truth." Eleanor, I have loved you since the first day you smiled at me in the office. I have loved you through every conversation, every shared moment. I love the way you think, the way you see the world, the way you make me feel like I'm finally awake after spending my whole life sleeping. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face. Then you understand why you have to marry Catherine, because love isn't just what we want. Sometimes it's about what's right. And the right thing is to honor your commitment to her, to give your marriage a real chance. Maybe you'll learn to love her. Maybe in time, I could spend 100 years with Catherine and never feel what I feel for you. Then spend 100 years trying. I was angry now, angry at the unfairness of it all. Try, Thomas, for her sake, for your sake, try to build something real with her. Because you and I, we can't. We just can't. It would be built on too much pain, too much betrayal. Every time we looked at each other, we'd see what we did to an innocent woman. He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. Finally, he nodded slowly. If this is what you want. It's not what I want, I interrupted. It's what has to be. There's a difference. He reached out and touched my face just once, his thumb brushing away a tear. Then he turned and walked back out into the rain, leaving me standing in my doorway, watching the love of my life disappear into the darkness. That was 3 days ago. The wedding is tomorrow, and I've written one final letter to Thomas, a letter that says everything I couldn't say that night, everything I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. But I won't send it. It will join the others in my desk drawer, unsent and unread, proof of a love that existed but could never be.
It's the morning of the wedding. I'm sitting at my desk, staring at the final letter I wrote to Thomas. It's in a cream-colored envelope, his name written on the front in my careful handwriting. Inside, I've told him everything. How I feel, what I want, what I dream about in the quiet hours before dawn. I've told him that I understand why he has to marry Catherine, but that a part of me will always wonder, what if? I've told him that I hope he finds happiness, real happiness, and that if he can't find it with Catherine, I pray he at least finds peace. I've told him that I love him, that I will always love him, that some part of me will belong to him until the day I die, whether we're together or not. And then I've told him goodbye. I'm holding this letter now, and I can't decide what to do with it. Every instinct tells me to destroy it, to burn it and scatter the ashes and pretend I never felt these things. But I can't. I need this letter to exist, even if he never reads it. I need proof that this love was real, that it mattered, that it wasn't just a fantasy I created to fill the loneliness of my life. So I've decided to do something reckless. I'm going to bring the letter to the wedding. Not to give to him. I would never do that. But I want it near me during the ceremony, a secret talisman against the heartbreak of watching him marry someone else. I know this is foolish. I know this is torture. But I can't stay away. I need to see him one last time, need to witness the moment when he becomes forever unavailable, need to force myself to accept that this chapter of my life is closing. The ceremony begins at 2:00. I should start getting ready. The wedding was beautiful. Of course it was. Catherine's father had spared no expense, and the result was something out of a fairy tale. The church was filled with white roses and lilies, their scent almost overwhelming in the September heat. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting everything in jewel tones. I sat in the back, as far from the front as possible, wearing a simple gray dress and trying to be invisible. I clutched my purse, and inside it, the letter lay like a stone. When Catherine walked down the aisle, she looked radiant. Her dress was exquisite, all lace and satin, and her face glowed with happiness. I hated her in that moment. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she was about to get everything I wanted and could never have. Then I saw Thomas standing at the altar, and my hatred dissolved into pure, aching sadness. He was wearing a black tuxedo, his hair neatly combed, his face composed,
but I knew him well enough to see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. He looked like a man walking to his execution, trying desperately to appear willing. The ceremony began. The priest talked about love and commitment, about two souls becoming one, about the sacred bond of marriage. Each word felt like a small blade cutting into me piece by piece. If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional words hung in the air. My hand moved unconsciously to my purse, feeling the shape of the letter inside. For one insane moment, I imagined standing up, walking to the front, handing Thomas the letter and asking him to read it before he made his vows. But I didn't. Of course I didn't. I sat frozen in my pew, watching as the moment passed, watching as silence gave consent. "I do," Catherine said, her voice clear and happy. The priest turned to Thomas. "And do you, Thomas Joseph Whitmore, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward?" Thomas hesitated. It was barely a pause, maybe a second at most, but I felt it in my bones. He was looking at Catherine, but I knew he was thinking of me. Thinking of what I'd said that night in the rain, about trying, about giving their marriage a real chance. "I do," he said finally. And just like that, it was done. Thomas was married. The life we might have had together dissolved like morning mist, leaving only the reality of what was. I stayed for the recessional, watched them walk back down the aisle as husband and wife. Catherine was beaming. Thomas looked relieved, like a soldier who had survived a battle he'd been certain would kill him. I didn't stay for the reception. I couldn't bear it. Instead, I slipped out of the church and walked, not paying attention to where I was going, my mind numb with grief.
I'm writing this entry from a place I never expected to be, the Riverside Public Library. I know that sounds strange. Let me explain. After I left the wedding, I walked for hours. I wasn't paying attention to where I was going, just putting one foot in front of the other, trying to outdistance the pain in my chest. When I finally looked up and realized where I was, I found myself standing in front of the library. It was almost closing time, but something drew me inside. Libraries had always been my refuge, even as a child. There was something comforting about being surrounded by other people's stories, other people's heartbreaks. It made my own seem less singular, less overwhelming. I wandered through the stacks, not looking for anything in particular, just needing to be somewhere quiet and safe. I found myself in the history section, surrounded by books about people long dead, their loves and losses turned into mere footnotes in dusty volumes. That's when I realized I still had the letter in my purse. I took it out and stared at it. All those words, all those feelings, sealed inside an envelope that Thomas would never open. What was the point of keeping it? It wasn't like I could send it now. The moment had passed. The decision had been made. Thomas was married, and my letter was just evidence of a love that never got its chance. I thought about throwing it away, finding a trash can and disposing of it like the waste paper it had become. But I couldn't. The thought of Thomas's name, of my confession ending up in some landfill felt like a desecration. That's when I had an idea. A strange, impulsive idea that maybe only makes sense to someone whose heart has just been broken. I decided to hide the letter here, in the library, not to destroy it, but to preserve it, to keep it safe in a place where stories are protected, where even sad endings are honored. I looked around, making sure no one was watching. The few remaining patrons were absorbed in their own business. I found a gap behind one of the bookcases, a space where the shelf didn't quite meet the wall.
It was perfect. Hidden but not destroyed. Forgotten but not lost.
I pulled out this journal. I've been carrying it with me, planning to write about the wedding, and I made a decision. I would leave the journal here too, along with the letter. I would leave this entire record of my love for Thomas, this evidence that we existed, that what we felt was real. Maybe someone would find it someday. Maybe they'd read these pages and understand. Or maybe it would stay hidden forever. Another secret the library kept. I'm slipping the letter between these pages now, the final letter, the one that says everything I couldn't say to his face. It's pressed here, between September 21st and September 22nd, right at the moment when my life split into before and after. And then I'm going to push this journal into that gap behind the bookcase, and I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go home, and tomorrow I'm going to wake up and go to work, and I'm going to learn how to live with this ache in my chest. I'm going to move forward, even though part of me will always be standing in that church, watching Thomas say, "I do," to someone else. If you're reading this, future reader, then you found not just my journal, but my heart. The letter is here, somewhere in these pages. I don't know if you'll read it. I don't know if you should. But I need you to know that it exists, that this love existed, that it mattered even though it never had a chance. Take care of it for me. And if you ever find yourself in love with someone you can't have, know that you're not alone. Know that decades before you, a woman named Eleanor Hartley felt the same impossible pain. And she survived it. Maybe you will too. Goodbye, future reader. Goodbye, Thomas. Goodbye to the life we never got to live. With love and sorrow, Eleanor Hartley. My hands were shaking as I turned to the next page, and there it was, a cream-colored envelope, pressed flat between the pages, Thomas's name written on the front in faded ink. I stared at it for a long moment. Should I read it? Eleanor had hidden this letter, but she'd also wanted someone to find it. She'd left it here specifically so that someday someone would know her story. Carefully, reverently, I opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. My dearest Thomas, by the time you might have read this letter, if you ever read it at all, you'll be married to Catherine. You'll have made your vows, exchanged your rings, started your life together. And I'll be exactly where I am now, on the outside, looking in at a life I can never have. I'm writing this knowing you'll never see these words. That's what makes it possible to be completely honest, to tell you things I could never say to your face. I love you, Thomas. I love you with an intensity that frightens me. I love you in a way I didn't know was possible until I met you. You were the first thought I have when I wake and the last before I sleep. You are the reason I started wearing perfume again, the reason I learned to make coffee the way you like it, the reason I look forward to Mondays instead of dreading them. I love the way you listen, really listen, when people talk. I love how you unconsciously tap your pen against your desk when you're thinking hard about something. I love the small scar above your left eyebrow that you got falling out of a tree when you were 8. I love your kindness, your intelligence, your terrible jokes that always make me laugh anyway. I love you, and it's breaking my heart that I can't tell you. Because here's the truth, Thomas. As much as I love you too much to ruin your life. Catherine is a good person. She doesn't deserve to have her wedding destroyed because two people fell in love at the wrong time. Your family doesn't deserve the scandal. And you don't deserve the guilt that would come from breaking your promise to her. So I'm letting you go. I'm watching you marry someone else, and I'm telling myself that this is what love really means. Not possession, but release. Not taking what I want, but wanting what's best for you. even if that breaks me. I hope you'll be happy with Catherine. I genuinely, truly hope that. I hope you'll grow to love her the way she loves you. I hope you'll build a beautiful life together, full of children and laughter and all the things that make a marriage real. And if you can't love her that way, I hope you'll at least be kind to her. She deserves someone who will cherish her, even if that someone can't be me. As for me, I'll be fine, or at least I'll learn to be fine. I'll continue working at the law firm, though I think I'll need to find a new position soon, somewhere you won't be. I'll eventually meet someone else, someone appropriate, someone who doesn't belong to another woman. I'll build my own life, different from the one I imagined with you, but mine nonetheless. But I want you to know that no matter how much time passes, no matter who else I might meet or what life I might build, a part of me will always belong to you. You were my first real love, Thomas. You were the person who showed me what it feels like to be truly seen, truly understood. That's not something I'll ever forget or replace. So this is goodbye. Goodbye to the dreams I had of us. Goodbye to the future I imagined. Goodbye to the men I love but can't have. I'll carry this goodbye with me for the rest of my life, but I'll carry the memory of our love too, the brief, bright, beautiful thing it was, and maybe that will be enough. Be happy, Thomas. That's all I want for you. Be happy even if it's not with me.
I carefully folded the letter and placed it back in its envelope, tears streaming down my face. Poor Eleanor. Poor Thomas. Poor Catherine. 3 people caught in an impossible situation, all trying to do the right thing, all getting hurt anyway. But there was more to the journal. The pages after the letter weren't empty. I kept reading. November 15th, 1962. I found this journal again today. I didn't mean to. I'd come to the library to return some books, and something drew me to the history section. There was the bookcase, and behind it, the gap where I'd hidden this record of my heartbreak. I pulled it out, intending just to touch it, to reassure myself that it was still here. But once I had it in my hands, I couldn't help but open it. Couldn't help but read what I'd written 2 months ago. 2 months. It feels like a lifetime. I should tell you what's happened since the wedding, future reader. You deserve to know how this story continues. I did leave the law firm. I couldn't bear to see Thomas every day, couldn't bear the careful politeness between us, the way we pretended we were nothing more than colleagues. I found a position at Anderson and Hoe across town, and I threw myself into my work with an intensity that worried my friends. I also heard through the inevitable grapevine of our small city that Thomas and Catherine had returned from their honeymoon in Europe. They'd bought a house in the nice part of town, the kind of house where successful couples raise successful families. According to mutual acquaintances, they seemed happy. I told myself I was glad. I told myself this meant I'd made the right choice. But then, 3 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. I was having lunch at Romano's, the little Italian place on 5th Street, when I looked up from my menu and saw Catherine walking toward my table. She was alone, and she looked different somehow. Thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. "Eleanor," she said, her voice soft. "May I join you?" I should have said no. Should have made an excuse, protected my healing heart. But something in her expression stopped me. She looked like she needed a friend. "Of course," I said. She sat down, ordered tea she didn't drink, and then, without preamble, said, "He told me about you." My blood went cold. "Catherine, it's all right," she interrupted. I asked him to. After the wedding, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something between you two, something more than he'd admitted. So I asked him directly to tell me the truth. All of it. I never meant... I know. He told me what you said to him, how you pushed him to marry me, how you stepped aside. Eleanor, you gave me the greatest gift anyone could give. You gave me a chance. I didn't know what to say. I sat there frozen while Catherine twisted her napkin in her hands.
"I came to tell you something," she continued. "Something I think you need to hear. Thomas is trying. He really is. He's kind to me, attentive. He's doing everything a good husband should do. But Eleanor," her voice cracked slightly, "he's not happy, and neither am I. I don't understand. I thought if I just loved him enough, if I was patient enough, he'd eventually love me back. And maybe he will, given time. But I realized something on our honeymoon, watching him pretend to be content while his eyes stayed sad. I realized that I don't want to be loved eventually. I don't want to be the person someone learns to love. I want to be the person someone can't help but love, the way Thomas can't help but love you." "Catherine, please don't. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty," she said firmly. "I'm telling you because I've made a decision. I'm letting him go." The world seemed to stop. "What?" "I'm ending the marriage. Or rather, I'm going to propose an annulment. We'll say it was a mistake, that we realized we weren't compatible. It will be scandalous, of course. My father will be furious. But I can't live my whole life with a man who wishes I was someone else. And Thomas can't live his whole life pretending to feel something he doesn't." "But you love him," I whispered. "I do. I love him enough to let him go. I learned that from you, actually. That night in your office, when you refused to interfere, you showed me what real love looks like. It's not about holding on. It's about doing what's right for the person you love, even when it destroys you." She stood, placed some money on the table for her untouched tea, and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sad, but also peaceful. "He doesn't know I'm telling you this. I wanted you to hear it from me first. We'll make the announcement next week. After that, Eleanor, he's free. And so are you." She left me sitting there, stunned, my mind racing with possibilities I'd forced myself to stop imagining. Thomas is going to be free. I don't know what to do with that information. I don't know if he'll want me or if too much has happened for us to go back. I don't know if I even should go back. Maybe the kindest thing would be to let him move forward without the complication of me. But for the first time in 2 months, I feel something other than grief. It's small and fragile, barely there at all. It feels like hope. December 3rd, 1962. The annulment was announced last week. Just as Catherine predicted, it's caused quite the scandal. The papers are calling it the marriage that lasted 2 months. And society matrons are having a field day speculating about what went wrong. But Catherine was true to her word. She took full responsibility, telling everyone that she'd realized they weren't suited for each other, that it was better to end things now than to live a lie. She protected Thomas's reputation even while sacrificing her own. She's stronger than I gave her credit for. Stronger than me, perhaps. I haven't seen Thomas, haven't heard from him. Part of me wonders if he blames me for the dissolution of his marriage, even though I had nothing to do with Catherine's decision. Part of me wonders if the love he felt for me
died the moment he said "I do" to someone else. I'm trying not to hope too much. Hope, I've learned, is dangerous. It makes the disappointment hurt worse when it inevitably comes. But late at night, alone in my apartment, I can't help but imagine a knock on my door, Thomas standing there rain-soaked like that night before his wedding, but this time with no obstacles between us. It's a foolish fantasy. Life is rarely that neat.
December 20th, 1962. He came to see me today. I was home, drinking tea and reading, trying to distract myself from the approach of Christmas, which suddenly felt unbearably lonely. When I heard the knock, I assumed it was my landlady with some complaint about the radiator. But it was Thomas. He looked thinner than I remembered, older somehow, though only 3 months had passed since the wedding. His eyes held something I'd never seen in them before, a kind of exhaustion, but also a clarity, like he'd been through fire and come out changed. "Eleanor," he said. Just my name, nothing else. "Come in," I managed. "You must be freezing." He came inside, but he didn't sit. Instead, he stood in the middle of my small living room, looking at me with an intensity that made my heart race. "Catherine told me she talked to you," he said finally. "Told me what she said." "Thomas, I didn't ask her to." "I know. That's not why I'm here." He took a breath. "I'm here because I need you to know something. These past 3 months have been the hardest of my life. Not because being married to Catherine was terrible. She was kind, patient, everything anyone could want in a wife. But because every single day I woke up wishing I was waking up next to you instead." My throat tightened. "Thomas, let me finish, please." He ran his hand through his hair, that nervous gesture I'd always found endearing. "When Catherine told me she wanted to end the marriage, my first feeling was relief, and that relief made me hate myself, because she didn't deserve that. She deserved someone who would be devastated at the thought of losing her. But I wasn't devastated. I was relieved. And then I was guilty about being relieved. And then I was angry at myself for ever agreeing to marry her in the first place. You were trying to do the right thing. The right thing would have been to be honest from the start, to tell her before the wedding that I was in love with someone else, to give her the choice instead of making it for her. But I was a coward, Eleanor. I let everyone else's expectations dictate my life, and 3 people got hurt because of it. He stepped closer, and I could see his hands trembling slightly. I spent the last few weeks thinking about what I wanted to say to you. I practiced speeches in my head, imagined this conversation 100 different ways. But now that I'm here, all of those carefully planned words have disappeared. So I'm just going to tell you the simple truth. He looked directly into my eyes, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. "I love you, Eleanor Hartley. I have loved you since that spring day when you first smiled at me. I loved you through my engagement, through my wedding, through my marriage. I will love you tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of my life. And if you'll have me, if you can forgive me for the mess I've made of everything, I want to spend whatever time I have left on this earth trying to make you as happy as you've made me." I stood there, unable to speak, tears streaming down my face. This was the moment I dreamed of. But now that it was here, I was terrified. "What if it doesn't work?" I whispered.
What if we've built this up in our heads and the reality can't match the fantasy? What if we hurt each other the way we hurt Catherine? Then we'll deal with it together, he said softly. Eleanor, I can't promise you perfection. I can't promise you that loving me will be easy or that we won't face judgment from people who think our timing is suspicious. But I can promise you honesty. I can promise you effort. I can promise you that every single day I will choose you, the way I should have chosen you from the beginning.
He reached out and took my hand, and the touch sent electricity through me. I know I'm asking a lot. I know I've hurt you, that I made you watch me marry someone else. I know there's probably a part of you that can't trust me after that. But Eleanor, please give me a chance. Give us a chance. Let me prove that this love we feel is real, that it's worth all the pain we've been through. I looked at our joined hands, felt the warmth of his skin against mine. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was too soon, too complicated, too likely to end in disaster. But my heart, my foolish, hopeful heart, knew what it wanted. Yes, I whispered. Yes, Thomas, I'll give us a chance. He pulled me into his arms, and for the first time in months, the ache in my chest eased. We stood there in my small living room, holding each other like survivors of a shipwreck, knowing that we'd been through something terrible, but had somehow made it to shore. I have something to show you, I said suddenly, pulling back. Wait here. I went to my bedroom, opened my desk drawer, and pulled out all 17 letters I'd written to him, the confessions I'd never sent, the love I'd never spoken aloud. I brought them back to the living room and handed them to him. What are these? He asked. Everything I couldn't say. Everything I felt while you were engaged, while you were married, while I was trying to let you go. Read them when you get home. I want you to know exactly what you're getting into, all the messy, complicated feelings I've been carrying. He held the letters like they were precious artifacts. Can I write you back? I laughed, a sound that was half sob. I would like that very much. He kissed me then, gentle and tentative, like he was afraid I might disappear. And then that kiss was everything we'd been holding back. All the longing, all the hope, all the love we'd tried so hard to deny. When he finally left, promising to see me the next day, I stood at my window and watched him walk down the street. The snow had started falling, covering the city in white, making everything look clean and new. Maybe we were getting a fresh start after all. January 14th, 1963. Thomas and I have been seeing each other for nearly a month now. We're taking things slowly, mindful of appearances and of Catherine's feelings. We don't go out in public much yet. Riverside is still buzzing with gossip about the annulment, and we don't want to fuel the speculation that I was somehow the cause of it. Instead, we spend quiet evenings at my apartment or his. We talk for hours the way we used to, but now without the weight of impossibility hanging over us. We're learning each other in a new context, not as stolen moments between obligations, but as two people genuinely building something together. It's wonderful. It's terrifying. It's everything I hoped it would be, and also completely different. Because the reality of being with Thomas is more complicated than the fantasy ever was. He carries guilt about Catherine, about the scandal, about the disappointment he caused his family. Some nights, I catch him staring into space with a haunted expression, and I know he's thinking about the cost of choosing love over duty. And I carry my own complications. Part of me still can't quite believe this is real, that I'm allowed to love him openly now. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for someone to take him away from me again. But we're trying. That's what matters. We're both trying to build something real out of the wreckage of what could have been. April 2nd, 1963. Thomas proposed to me last night. We were having dinner at his house. He'd cooked, which was ambitious, if not entirely successful.
when he suddenly got quiet. I looked up from my somewhat charred chicken to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "Eleanor," he said, "I know it's too soon. I know we should wait longer, be more careful, worry more about what people will think. But I've spent too much of my life doing what I should do instead of what I want to do. And what I want is to marry you." He didn't have a ring, didn't get down on one knee, just looked at me across a table scattered with the evidence of his culinary disaster and asked me to be his wife. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Thomas, I don't want you to rush into another marriage just to make up for the last one. I don't want to be your redemption story." "You're not my redemption story," he said firmly. "You're my love story. The redemption part, that's something I have to work out on my own, with time and probably a lot of therapy. But loving you, that's not about fixing my mistakes. That's about choosing my future." "People will talk," I warned him. "They'll say you left Catherine for me, that I was the other woman all along." "Let them talk. Eleanor, I spent months caring too much about what people thought, and it nearly cost me everything. I'm done living my life for other people's approval. I'm ready to live it for us." I should have been cautious, should have insisted we wait, give the scandal time to die down, prove that our relationship could last. But looking at him across that table, his eyes full of love and certainty, I couldn't find it in me to be careful. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you." We're planning a small ceremony. Very small. Just immediate family and a few close friends. Nothing like his wedding to Catherine. No elaborate reception, no society pages, no pretense. Just two people making promises to each other and meaning them. The wedding is set for June 15th, 2 months away. I'm terrified and elated in equal measure. June 14th, 1963. Tomorrow, I marry Thomas Whitmore. I've been thinking a lot about that day last September when I sat in the back of a church and watched him marry someone else. About the letter I wrote but never sent. The love I acknowledged but tried to bury. I came back to the library today. Back to this history section where I hid this journal 9 months ago. I pulled it out of its hiding place, read through all these entries, traced my journey from heartbreak to hope. And I realized something. I need to finish this story properly, not just for me, but for anyone who might find this journal in the future. So here's the ending, future reader. Here's what happened to Eleanor Hartley and Thomas Whitmore. We didn't get a fairy tale. We got something better, something real. We got a love that survived obstacles, that grew through pain, that learned to be patient and then found its moment. Tomorrow, when I stand across from Thomas and make my vows, I'll be thinking about all the times I almost gave up on this possibility. I'll be thinking about Catherine, hoping she finds her own happiness with someone who can love her the way she deserves. I'll be thinking about the letter I wrote, the one I thought would never reach its destination. But that's the thing about letters, about love, about hope. Sometimes the destination isn't the person you're writing to. Sometimes the destination is yourself, years later having survived the heartbreak and found your way to joy. This journal, this record of pain and hope and eventual triumph, this is my letter to the future. To anyone who finds it, who reads these pages and recognizes their own heartbreak in my words, the letter did reach its destination, after all. It just took a different path than I expected. Tomorrow, I become Eleanor Whitmore, and this chapter of my life, the chapter of longing and loss, finally closes. June 15th, 1963. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore. That's who I am now. The ceremony was small and perfect. My parents came, though they were clearly uncomfortable with the speed of everything. Thomas's mother attended, though his father refused, still angry about the annulment. A few friends from the law firm where I used to work. And Catherine. She arrived just as the ceremony was about to start, slipping into the back row. I saw her and my heart stopped, fear flooding through me. But she caught my eye and smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile, and nodded. Permission, blessing, release. After the ceremony, she approached us. Thomas stiffened beside me, but I squeezed his hand. "I wanted to come," Catherine said softly, "because I wanted you both to know that I hold no ill will. It took me a while to get here, but I'm genuinely happy for you. You were right, Eleanor. Love isn't about possession. It's about wanting the best for someone, even when that someone isn't you." "Catherine," I said, my voice breaking, "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I've spent the last few months in therapy, working through everything that happened, and I've realized something. That marriage ending was the best thing that could have happened to me. It forced me to figure out who I am outside of my father's expectations, outside of the society I was raised in. I'm going back to school. Did you know that? Getting my degree in literature, something I always wanted to do but never thought I could." She looked at Thomas. "I forgive you, both of you. And more than that, I thank you. You gave me the gift of freedom, even if it didn't feel like a gift at the time." Then she hugged us both, and I felt something in my chest finally settle. The guilt I'd been carrying, the fear that we'd destroyed someone's life for our own happiness, it didn't disappear entirely, but it eased. We're not villains in Catherine's story. We're just people who made difficult choices, who caused pain without meaning to, who tried our best to do right by everyone even when there was no right answer. Now, hours later, I'm sitting in our hotel room, our room, Thomas's and mine, writing this final entry while he sleeps. Tomorrow we leave for our honeymoon, a cabin upstate, nothing fancy. 2 weeks of quiet and peace and figuring out how to be married to each other. And when we return, I'm going to bring this journal back to the library one last time. I'm going to slide it back into that gap behind the history shelf, back into its hiding place. Maybe someone will find it someday, decades from now. Maybe they'll read this story and find hope in it. Or maybe it will stay hidden forever, another secret the library keeps. Either way, I want it to exist. I want this record of our journey, the pain and the hope and the eventual joy. I want proof that love can survive impossible circumstances, that happy endings sometimes come after you've given up on them, that letters can reach their destination even when they take the most unexpected paths. So, this is goodbye, future reader. Thank you for bearing witness to my story. Thank you for caring about a woman you've never met, about a love that existed decades before your time. May you find your own happiness, your own letter that reaches its destination, your own love worth fighting for. With joy and gratitude, Eleanor Whitmore, Nee Hartley. P.S. The letter is still here, pressed between these pages. The one I wrote to Thomas before his first wedding. I showed it to him on our wedding night, and he cried reading it. We talked about whether to keep it or burn it, whether holding on to that pain served any purpose. We decided to keep it, to leave it here with this journal, because that letter is part of our story too. It's proof of how far we've come, of what we survived to get here. So if you found this journal, the letter is yours now, future reader, a gift from the past, a reminder that love sometimes means letting go, but also that sometimes, if you're very lucky, love comes back to you.
I closed the journal, my hands shaking, and realized there were more loose pages tucked in the back. They looked different from the journal entries, separate sheets of paper, dated much later, added to the journal on different occasions. August 3rd, 1973, 10 years later. Dear future reader, I came back to the library today. It's been exactly 10 years since I last visited this spot, since I slid this journal behind the history shelf on my wedding night. I wasn't sure it would still be here. Libraries rearrange, shelves get moved, hiding places get discovered. But I had to check, and here it was, exactly where I left it, dusty and forgotten. I wanted to add this page to tell you what happened next. Not because the story needs an update, but because I thought you deserved to know that the happy ending lasted. Thomas and I have been married for 10 years now. We have 2 children, William, who's 7, and Sarah, who's 5. We live in a house on Elm Street, and Thomas has his own law practice now. I stopped working when William was born, though I've been thinking about going back part-time. It hasn't been perfect. Marriage never is. We've had fights and frustrations, moments when the reality of daily life felt crushing. Thomas still struggles sometimes with guilt over Catherine, though it's gotten better over the years. And I still occasionally wake up in the night convinced that this happiness is temporary, that it will be taken away. But we've built a life together, a real life, with mortgage payments and parent-teacher conferences and arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash. It's mundane and ordinary and absolutely nothing like the dramatic, passionate fantasy I used to imagine. And it's wonderful. Catherine got married 5 years ago. Did I mention that? To a literature professor she met in graduate school. They seem genuinely happy together. She sends us Christmas cards, which felt strange at first, but now feels right. We're not close friends, but we're not enemies either. We're just people who were part of each other's stories and have moved on to write new chapters. I'm leaving this journal here again, adding this page to the record so that if anyone finds it, they know. The love story continued. The happy ending held. Sometimes letters do reach their destinations. Sometimes love survives. Sometimes the story has a sequel. With continued joy, Eleanor Whitmore. November 12th, 1985. Dear future reader, another decade, another visit to this hiding place. I'm 57 now, and Thomas is 60. Our children are grown. William is finishing law school, following in his father's footsteps, and Sarah just got engaged. Thomas retired from his practice last year. We're planning to travel, to do all the things we put off while raising children and building careers. We're going to Italy next spring, the honeymoon we never got to take all those years ago because we were too broke and too worried about appearances. I came back to the library today because Sarah got engaged, and it made me think about beginnings. About the beginning Thomas and I had, so unconventional and complicated. About the letter I wrote and never sent. About the love that seemed impossible but found its way anyway. Sarah's engagement is nothing like mine was. She and her fiancé are young and happy and uncomplicated. There's no scandal, no ex-wives, no society gossip. Just 2 people in love, ready to start their lives together. I'm glad for her. Glad she gets the simple, joyful beginning I didn't have. But I'm also glad for my own story, complications and all. Because those complications taught me things about sacrifice and patience, about the cost of love and its value. Thomas's health isn't what it used to be. His heart gives him trouble sometimes, and the doctors say he needs to slow down. It scares me thinking about a future without him. After fighting so hard to be together, the thought of losing him to something as ordinary as age feels unbearably cruel. But that's life, isn't it? We don't get forever, no matter how much we want it. We get the time we're given, and we make the most of it. I'm grateful for the time we've had, for the 22 years of marriage, the children we raised, the quiet mornings drinking coffee together, the inside jokes no one else understands, for all of it. If this is my last entry in this journal, and I think it might be, I'm getting too old to be climbing behind library shelves. I want to end it with gratitude. For Thomas, for our improbable lust story, for the way everything worked out despite all the reasons it shouldn't have. And for you, future reader, whoever you are, thank you for caring about 2 people you never met. Thank you for reading our story.
I hope it gave you something, hope or comfort or just the knowledge that love can be messy and complicated and still worth fighting for. Be well, love deeply, and if you ever find yourself hiding a letter behind a library shelf, know that you're in good company. With love across the decades. Eleanor Whitmore.
I sat there for a long time after finishing Eleanor's final entry, tears streaming down my face. The library was completely silent except for the rain and my own quiet sobbing. I carefully removed both letters from the journal, the one Eleanor had written to Thomas in 1962 and the one he'd written to her 30 years later. They were both there, preserved between the pages, two bookends to a love story that had lasted a lifetime. I thought about Eleanor, returning to this spot again and again over the decades, adding pages to her journal, ensuring that their story would survive even after she was gone. I wondered if she was still alive, or if she'd passed away like Thomas, leaving only these pages as evidence that they'd existed. And then I looked at the date on her final entry, March 8th, 1992, 33 years ago. On impulse, I opened my laptop and searched for Eleanor Whitmore in Riverside. It took a few tries, there were several people with that name, but eventually I found an obituary. Eleanor Hartley Whitmore died peacefully at age 89 on January 15, 2007, survived by her children, William and Sarah, 5 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Preceded in death by her husband, Thomas Whitmore, the love of her life. The love of her life. They'd written that in her obituary. After everything, the scandal, the complications, the impossible beginning, she'd been remembered as the woman who'd loved Thomas Whitmore. I sat back, overwhelmed by the weight of what I'd discovered. This wasn't just a journal. It was a love letter to the future, a message in a bottle cast into time, waiting for someone to find it and understand. And I had found it. I looked at the clock. It was past midnight. I'd been reading for over 3 hours, lost in Eleanor's story. I should go home, get some sleep, come back to this tomorrow with fresh eyes. But I couldn't. I couldn't just leave the journal here, hidden behind a shelf where it might be lost or destroyed. This story was too important, too beautiful, too real to risk losing. I made a decision. I carefully photographed every page of the journal, both letters included. Then I wrote a note on library stationery. This journal was found behind the history shelf on October 27, 2025. It contains the true story of Eleanor Hartley Whitmore and Thomas Whitmore, a love that survived impossible circumstances. I have preserved their story digitally, but I am returning the original journal to its hiding place as Eleanor intended. If you find this journal, please treat it with care. It is someone's whole heart preserved in ink and paper.
A fellow librarian who believes in love stories. I tucked the note into the front of the journal, carefully slid it back behind the shelf, and stood up, my knees protesting after sitting on the floor for so long. As I gathered my things and prepared to lock up the library for the night, I thought about Eleanor's question to the future reader. Had the letter reached its destination? Yes, I thought. Yes, it had. Not just Thomas, though it had eventually reached him in its way, but it had also reached me, 33 years after Eleanor's last entry, 63 years after she first hid it away. It had reached me and reminded me why I became a librarian in the first place, because stories matter, because love matters, because the human heart, in all its mess and complexity and impossible hope, deserves to be remembered. I turned off the lights and locked the library door behind me. The rain had stopped and the night air was clean and fresh. As I walked to my car, I thought about my own life, my own loneliness, my own quiet resignation that love was something that happened to other people, not to me. Maybe I'd been wrong about that. Maybe Eleanor's story was trying to tell me something, that it's never too late, that love can find you in unexpected ways, that sometimes the letters we write into the void actually reach someone who needs to hear them. I drove home through the empty streets of Riverside, the same streets where Eleanor and Thomas had walked decades ago, where they'd built their improbable love story. And I thought, maybe I should start writing my own letters, not to hide them away, but to send them out into the world, to take chances, to hope. Because if Eleanor Hartley could find her happy ending after everything she went through, then maybe, just maybe, anyone could. The letter had reached its destination after all. Not the one Eleanor had intended when she first wrote it, but perhaps an even more important one. It had reached a lonely librarian on a rainy Tuesday night, reminding her that love stories don't end. They just get passed on, generation after generation, giving hope to anyone who needs it. And I needed it. So this is my addition to Eleanor's story, my own note in the bottle for some future reader who might need to hear it. The letter reached me. Her story changed me. And because of that, I'm going to be brave enough to write my own love story, whatever form it takes. Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you, Thomas. Your letter finally reached its destination, and the story continues. 1 year later, I returned to the library, to the history section, to the gap behind the shelf. I pulled out Eleanor's journal, dusty as ever, and added this final page to the record. His name is David. I met him 6 months ago at a book club meeting. Appropriate, given that a book led me to him in a way. We've been taking things slowly, carefully, learning each other the way Eleanor and Thomas did all those years ago. I told him about the journal on our third date, took him to the library after hours, showed him the hiding place, let him read Eleanor's story. He cried, just like I did, and then he said something I'll never forget. She was right, you know. The letter did reach its destination. It reached you, and through you, it reached me, because I wouldn't be here if you hadn't found it, hadn't been inspired by it, hadn't decided to take a chance on love. He's right. Eleanor's letter has traveled across decades, touching lives she never knew existed, inspiring hope in hearts she never met. I'm leaving the journal here, in its hiding place, for the next person who needs to find it. Because that's what Eleanor intended, not for her story to end, but for it to continue, to keep reaching new destinations, to keep reminding people that love is worth fighting for. Someday, another librarian might find this journal. They'll read Eleanor's story and mine, and hopefully they'll add their own page to the record. And the letter will continue its journey, reaching destination after destination, heart after heart, generation after generation. That's the thing about love stories. They never really end. They just keep beginning, over and over again in different hearts in different times. The letter that never reached its destination has reached everywhere it needed to go. With hope and gratitude, a librarian who finally found her own love story. The end.